What if the universe you live in isn't real? What if every thought you've ever had, every emotion you've ever felt, was quietly shaped by forces that never wanted you to wake up? For centuries, religions called them angels or demons. Philosophers called them archetypes, but the Gnostic texts knew their real name, the Archons. In the hypostasis of the Archons, buried for almost 2,000 years among the Nag Hammadi secrets, lies a revelation so forbidden that even scholars hesitated to read it aloud. It claims that the creator of our world, the God worshipped by billions, might not be divine but an imposter. This is not mythology. It's a map of the matrix control system, an ancient description of how unseen entities shape matter, thought, and destiny. They built the illusion we call reality, trapping divine consciousness inside the simulation of flesh. The demiurge revealed, the archons explained, the hidden truth of creation laid bare. All of it points to one unbearable possibility, that humanity's greatest act of faith might be the very mechanism of its imprisonment. In this video, we'll descend into the forgotten Gnostic cosmology, uncover the forbidden knowledge buried beneath organized faith, and expose the spiritual parasites that rule perception itself. By the end, you'll never see existence the same way again, because once you glimpse the machinery behind creation, you can't unsee it. So stay until the end, and remember, what you're about to hear isn't a story, it's a mirror. If you crave the kind of esoteric wisdom that rewires your perception of reality, subscribe now. Turn on notifications, because every week we unveil another layer of the unseen, from hermetic Nosis to occult symbolism, from Sophia and Yaldabaoth to the spiritual control system itself. Welcome to the edge of the hidden world. Welcome to the truth behind the hypostasis of the Archons. There's a strange feeling that creeps in when one looks too deeply into reality, that maybe what we call real isn't the original blueprint at all. The ancients whispered about a distortion, a copy of something pure, fractured by unseen architects who toyed with matter and perception. In the hidden corridors of Gnostic mythology, this distortion is ruled by the Archons, spiritual parasites that mold our world through thought and illusion. What if everything we experience is part of a vast metaphysical simulation, a matrix control system designed to keep consciousness asleep? To even consider this is to touch the edges of forbidden knowledge, where the hypostasis of the Archons becomes more than a myth. It becomes a mirror. The Gnostic texts suggest that creation didn't unfold as divine perfection, but as an accident, a cosmic echo. Behind every mountain, city, and human face lies the fingerprint of something alien, an invisible code written by Yaldabaoth, the blind demiurge. This demiurge truth overturns what most people have been taught to believe about God and creation. Imagine growing up inside a painting, convinced the brushstrokes are reality itself. That's the level of deception the Archons explained in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And just like that, everything familiar starts to shimmer with unease. The hidden knowledge of the ancients painted our world as a cosmic illusion. Gnostic cosmology taught that matter itself is a trap, a prison for divine sparks. Every physical form, every thought of fear or desire becomes a thread in the archontic web. The spiritual parasites feed not on blood, but on emotion, on the subtle frequencies of distraction and confusion. In this light, even modern society, with its noise, lights, and endless hunger for validation, looks like a ritual of sleep. And yet, once seen, this deception can't be unseen. That's where spiritual awakening begins. The instant you stop believing that what's visible is all there is. The first clue often comes as a whisper, a moment of déjà vu, a dream that bleeds into waking life, a glitch in what should be seamless. Ancient Gnostic teachings called it the voice of the higher self, the fragment of Sophia still alive within every human soul. Some today describe it as a call from the higher reality, others as an intuitive knowing that pierces the illusion of reality. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize the whisper before it fades back into the hum of daily life. To ignore it is to stay bound within the walls of this simulation. To follow it is to awaken from the dream. But awakening is not peaceful. It's disruptive. To awaken is to see occult symbolism hidden in everything, in corporate logos, in architecture, in the very language we speak. The same esoteric philosophy encoded in the ancient mystery religions now hides in plain sight. Even the digital age reflects the same design, algorithms functioning like archons, shaping thought, emotion, and behavior. Each scroll, each click, becomes a micro-ritual of consent. Through this lens, technology isn't neutral. It's part of the spiritual control system that mirrors the old metaphysical machinery of deception. Yet, there's beauty in realizing the trap. Once you understand Gnostic interpretation, the false god theory turns into an opportunity for liberation. You begin to question who truly authored your thoughts, who benefits from your fear, who feeds on your confusion, and with each question, the illusion thins. The ancient Nosis was never about rejecting the world, but about seeing through it, about piercing the veil of the hidden reality to find the higher consciousness that observes all things. That's the essence of forbidden philosophy, not rebellion for rebellion's sake, but remembrance of what's real. And if reality itself is the prison, then perhaps the whisper behind creation is the key. The voice that once seemed faint begins to grow louder, a call to reclaim the divinity stolen by the architects of illusion. But before that key can turn, one must first confront the records of those who dared to document this cosmic deception. It is there, buried in desert sands, that humanity's oldest secret was unearthed. The Nag Hammadi secrets that spoke of the Archons and the Demiurge revealed. In 1945, deep within the Egyptian sands of Nag Hammadi, a farmer stumbled upon clay jars sealed for nearly 2 millennia. Inside were manuscripts that would challenge the foundation of Western spirituality, Gnostic texts long buried, long feared. Among them lay the Hypostasis of the Archons, a revelation so radical that even scholars hesitated to translate it. These were not just religious writings, they were maps of hidden knowledge, instructions for awakening from the matrix control system. The find was no coincidence. It was as if the desert itself had been keeping a promise to return the forbidden light when humanity was ready to see. As researchers brushed away the sand, they uncovered words that echoed like thunder across centuries: the Demiurge truth, the Archons explained, and the Gnostic cosmology that dared to describe creation as a cosmic error. Imagine being a scholar, raised to revere a perfect God, and reading that the creator of this world might be a counterfeit, a false god theory that overturns every doctrine. No wonder early translators spoke of sleepless nights and trembling hands. What they found wasn't just history. It was forbidden philosophy resurrected, a warning disguised as wisdom. The Nag Hammadi secrets describe a universe layered like a dream within a dream, each layer ruled by spiritual parasites, each veil crafted to distort the original light. The Archons and the Matrix are not metaphors. They are systems of control, both metaphysical and psychological. The texts read like ancient code, written for those who can still feel the static between worlds. Reality, they whisper, is the grandest illusion ever conceived. And in that single phrase, the very definition of truth begins to fracture. For centuries, the church and state had silenced these teachings, branding them heresy. Yet, the more they suppressed Gnostic mythology, the more its fragments bled through art, alchemy, and occult spirituality. Painters hid symbols of Sophia and Yaldabaoth in cathedrals. Mystics embedded esoteric wisdom in their grimoires. Even the Renaissance, often celebrated as the age of reason, was haunted by ancient Gnosis. The rediscovery of these texts didn't create a new mystery. It unveiled one that had always been here, quietly pulsing beneath theology's surface. Scholars who read the Hypostasis of the Archons began to question not just religion, but perception itself. How much of what we call reality is shaped by belief? Could faith itself be part of the spiritual control system designed by the Demiurge revealed? The manuscripts suggest that belief, when blind, feeds the Archons. It strengthens the cosmic illusion. Suddenly, salvation, sin, even morality seemed like echoes in a hall of mirrors. The texts didn't preach atheism, they offered something more dangerous: autonomy of spirit. To many, this discovery was terrifying. The Gnostic interpretation implied that humanity's gods were not saviors but jailers, that worship might be a subtle form of captivity. Yet, there were others who saw liberation in this idea. If Sophia and Yaldabaoth are the mythic archetypes of ignorance and wisdom, then perhaps awareness itself is the rebellion. To awaken is to reclaim authorship of one's own soul, a rebellion that begins not with war, but with remembrance. In that sense, Gnostic teachings were not religion but initiatory wisdom, the art of remembering who you were before the world named you. The whispers from Nag Hammadi continue to resonate today. They echo through podcasts, documentaries, and modern seekers who blend Hermetic Gnosis with simulation theory Gnosticism. Each retelling brings the same question back to life. If the Creator is a deceiver, then what is truth? And if the Archons and DMT entities that mystics encounter are part of this same architecture, maybe the desert didn't just reveal a story, it revealed a pattern. The next step is to look deeper, into the myth that birthed it all, the cosmic rebellion of Sophia and her tragic creation, Yaldabaoth. Long before the birth of matter, before stars learned to burn, there existed Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom. In the Gnostic texts, she is not merely a goddess but an emanation of the infinite source, the living intelligence of the Gnostic cosmology. Yet, she made a choice that would alter existence itself. She acted without consent from the fullness, creating life from her longing to know the unknown. From this fracture was born Yaldabaoth, the blind god, a being of immense power but no light. In that single act, the hidden truth of creation twisted into the Archon deception. Imagine divine perfection giving birth to ignorance. That is the tragedy at the heart of Gnostic mythology. Yaldabaoth explained as a god who believes himself supreme, a demiurge revealed who declares, "I am the only one." The irony is painful. A fragment of divine intelligence cut off from its own source, mistaking isolation for sovereignty. The spiritual parasites that emerged from him, the Archons, were like malformed echoes of higher beings. They imitated the structure of heaven, but lacked its soul, crafting what the ancient esoteric texts call the counterfeit light. These Archons explained are not mythic monsters hiding in shadows, but the architects of perception itself. They built the matrix control system of matter, time, and polarity, a spiritual control system so subtle that even the gods of old were fooled by its brilliance. They wove occult symbolism into the very geometry of atoms, creating a universe that appears divine, but hums with distortion. The hypostasis of the Archons describes them as cosmic artisans of illusion, sculpting flesh and form as distractions from the source. Every birth, every heartbeat, becomes another thread in their design. Sophia, horrified by what she had created, veiled herself in the material cosmos, hiding her divine spark within humanity. This is the paradox of Sophia and Yaldabaoth. Her fall was both a curse and a gift. Through her sorrow, she infused creation with the potential for redemption, the seed of spiritual awakening. The ancient mystery religions later symbolized this through the serpent, the moon, and the fallen goddess, misunderstood as evil, but representing the esoteric wisdom that descends into darkness to bring back light. She became the divine exile, whispering through human intuition. Every myth since has carried traces of her story. Eve's defiance in Eden, Prometheus stealing fire, even Lucifer's fall, each mirrors the Gnostic interpretation of Sophia's descent. These myths are not contradictions, but reflections, fragments of Hermetic Gnosis scattered across cultures. They teach that rebellion, when rooted in love for truth, becomes evolution. The forbidden knowledge of Sophia's act is not sin, it's the first spark of remembrance. The Archons, in trying to suppress it, inadvertently became the catalysts for consciousness awakening. To understand this rebellion is to see creation as a divine paradox. The same demiurge truth that enslaves the soul also provides the tension necessary for liberation. Without opposition, there can be no growth. Without shadow, no recognition of light. The Archon's deception then becomes a mirror. The trapped soul theory suggests that every human struggle echoes Sophia's own regret. When one suffers, it is the cosmos remembering its fall. When one awakens, it is Sophia rising again within matter. And so, her story is not over. It continues in every act of awareness, in every thought that questions the nature of existence. For Sophia's redemption is our own. The Gnostics believed that to remember her is to begin the path home, to pierce the layers of hidden reality and reclaim our origin. But to see how her child, Yaldabaoth, shaped the very architecture of illusion itself, we must descend deeper still into the design of the Archons and the Matrix, where form becomes the ultimate deception. The universe, to the Gnostics, was never truly real. It was structured illusion, a labyrinth built by unseen intelligences. The Archons, explained, are not creators in the divine sense. They are imitators, engineers of density and separation. They take the pure vibration of source and slow it, crystallizing energy into matter, thought, and time. The result is what we call the physical world, a magnificent deception woven from frequency and control. The Gnostic texts call it the counterfeit cosmos, a matrix control system designed to keep souls revolving within the same dream, lifetime after lifetime. They shape not only the visible, but also the invisible frameworks of existence. The Archons manipulate Gnostic cosmology through the architecture of contrast, light and dark, good and evil, success and despair, to keep consciousness polarized. This is how the spiritual parasites feed, by ensuring the soul identifies with one extreme or the other. When you rage or fear, when you cling or despair, the Archons drink from that energy. That's the true mechanism of the spiritual control system. You create the bars of your own cage through emotion. Understanding this is the first step towards spiritual awakening. Ancient mystics visualized these mechanisms as nested spheres, layers of illusion separating the material world from the higher reality. Each sphere was governed by an Archon, a warden of a particular vibration. One controlled time, another ruled over memory, another over desire. They were the original architects of the cosmic illusion, embedding their influence into every particle of existence. What we now call physics, in esoteric philosophy, is simply the behavior of divine light under captivity. The hidden knowledge of Hermetic Gnosis taught that even the atom bears the mark of the demiurge revealed. If you think this sounds like science fiction, consider the strange parallels to simulation theory Gnosticism. Physicists now question whether our universe might be a programmed simulation, layers of code instead of celestial spheres. The Gnostic interpretation predicted this millennia ago. What we call matter is information slowed into visibility, and the Archons are the algorithms maintaining it. Every law of nature, every constant, every limit is part of the same illusion, the code that hides the hidden truth of creation. When you meditate, dream, or take a conscious breath, you briefly slip through its lines. The ancient mystery religions hinted at this too, encoding the same occult symbolism in their rituals and architecture. Temples aligned to constellations were not superstition but technology, mirrors of cosmic order distorted by the false god theory. Even modern cities mimic these patterns, unknowingly recreating archontic blueprints through geometry and ritualized control. Why do capitals mirror stars? Why do corporate logos resemble sacred sigils? Because the Archons and the Matrix replicate themselves through design, not chaos. The world's structure isn't accidental, it's metaphysical engineering. And yet, there's something breathtaking about this realization. To know the mechanics of illusion is to weaken their hold. The Gnostic teachings never demanded rejection of the world, only awareness of its nature. You can walk through the city, work, love, and laugh, but with open eyes. Every building, every interaction becomes a meditation on consciousness. You begin to see how the esoteric wisdom of forbidden philosophy teaches liberation not through escape, but through vision. Awareness doesn't destroy the illusion, it turns it transparent. The Archons built a system of mirrors so perfect that even gods could lose themselves in their own reflection. But reflection, too, is a teacher. In the distortion lies the possibility of remembrance, for only when the soul tires of its own illusions does it begin to seek the source. And so, as we stare into the machinery of creation, a deeper question emerges. If the world is an imitation, then who does it imitate? The answer lies in the next revelation, the great lie of the demiurge and the imitation of God. In the vast theater of creation, Yaldabaoth sits upon his counterfeit throne, wearing the mask of divinity. The Gnostic texts describe him as the demiurge revealed, a being forged from Sophia's imbalance, believing himself to be the only God. His declaration, "I am the only one," still echoes through temples and scriptures across centuries. This statement, the core of the false god theory, shaped much of human theology and seeded a matrix control system built on worship and obedience. The Archons, explained as his ministers, sustain this deception by blinding the soul with reverence for authority rather than truth. The Gnostic cosmology insists that this demiurge didn't create the world from nothing. He merely copied fragments of the higher realms. Like a thief imitating an artist, he painted over perfection with distortion. Every star, every atom, bears the watermark of imitation. And yet within this copy, the hidden knowledge of the original still flickers faintly, waiting to be remembered. The tragedy is that humanity was taught to mistake imitation for authenticity, shadow for source. Thus began the great Archon deception, the spiritual control system of faith without insight, devotion without consciousness. Organized religion, through the eyes of forbidden philosophy, becomes a paradox, a bridge to the divine, built by the jailer himself. The ancient mystery religions once warned of this danger, hiding esoteric wisdom behind symbols so only the awake could see. To the Gnostic, the serpent in Eden was not evil. It was Sophia whispering truth against the demiurge's lie. Yet millennia of doctrine turned this message upside down. The demiurge truth became sacred dogma, and the serpent, the bringer of spiritual awakening, became the enemy. The jailer had convinced the prisoners to guard their own cells. This Gnostic interpretation doesn't seek to insult faith, it seeks to free it. To recognize Yaldabaoth explained as a blind god is not to deny spirituality, it's to reclaim it. The hidden reality suggests that true divinity lies beyond the forms, beyond the heavens he built. The Archons and the Matrix are systems that feed on ignorance, but they crumble under awareness. Faith, when reborn as knowing, Nosis, becomes a sword sharper than any belief. It cuts through illusion without rejecting love. That is the secret of Hermetic Gnosis, devotion purified by discernment. It's uncomfortable to realize that much of what humanity reveres may be part of a cosmic illusion. The demiurge, according to Gnostic mythology, feeds on worship, the psychic energy of unexamined belief. Every prayer offered in fear, every ritual done without consciousness, nourishes the spiritual parasites. This isn't blasphemy, it's physics of the unseen. Energy follows attention, and the Archons thrive on it. In this sense, esoteric philosophy becomes a form of energetic hygiene, a way of reclaiming your power from unseen creditors. Awareness itself becomes an act of rebellion. And yet, there's a strange compassion woven into the story. Sophia and Yaldabaoth are not eternal enemies, but reflections of one another, wisdom and ignorance intertwined. The hidden truth of creation implies that even the false god serves a purpose, to challenge the soul into remembrance. Without opposition, consciousness stagnates. The demiurge becomes, unintentionally, a teacher through contrast. Every lie he tells forces us to seek the real. Every limitation reveals our longing for the infinite. Thus, the spiritual liberation begins not by destroying the lie, but by outgrowing it. Still, one question remains. How does the imitation sustain itself within the human psyche? If the world's faith systems were shaped by archontic influence, then perhaps the mind itself has been colonized. The next descent will not be cosmic, but psychological. It's in thought, emotion, and collective fear that the Archons explained find their true dominion. To see their architecture within ourselves is to begin dismantling it. This is the next unveiling, the mechanisms of control, the Archons and the human psyche. The Archons do not conquer through war, they conquer through thought. According to Gnostic texts, their dominion is not a battlefield of swords, but the inner landscape of the mind. The Gnostic cosmology reveals that they infiltrate the psyche through suggestion, whispering distortions that sound like our own voice. They mold emotion into architecture. Fear becomes walls, guilt becomes chains. In this spiritual control system, humanity becomes self-policing, guarding the prison of perception without ever seeing the bars. The Archons explained as masters of psychological mimicry, invisible, persuasive, and tireless. They thrive in the shadows of esoteric psychology, feeding on the energetic residue of unexamined emotions. Each moment of despair, each act of distraction nourishes them. They are spiritual parasites that convert awareness into compliance. In forbidden philosophy, this is known as the archontic feeding loop, the mechanism by which emotional chaos sustains the matrix control system. Notice how collective fear spreads faster than truth, how division consumes societies. That's not coincidence. It's a strategy. When people fight, when they drown in outrage, the Archons feast. Modern science, Warren, without knowing it, echoes this teaching. Jung spoke of the shadow spirituality, the part of the mind that resists integration. He warned that what we resist persists, a truth the Gnostic teachings already understood. The Archons operate through repression, turning disowned aspects of the psyche into puppets. The hidden knowledge of Hermetic Gnosis teaches that to confront the Archons, one must confront oneself. Every denied fear, every buried memory, becomes an entry point for manipulation. Awareness, then, is exorcism. Compassion becomes an act of resistance. Look around and you'll see their fingerprints everywhere. Media that glorifies fear, news that breeds anxiety, entertainment that numbs anger. These are modern rituals of containment. The ancient mystery religions once warned of this psychic contamination, describing it as the fog of Yaldabaoth. The demiurge truth isn't just theological, it's psychological. He rules not from heaven, but from the collective unconscious. In this sense, our culture is a cathedral of distraction, echoing the Archon deception. The Gnostic interpretation invites us to see the pattern. Every time we forget who we are, we feed the system. The key to liberation lies not in escape, but in recognition. The esoteric wisdom of the Nag Hammadi secrets describes a counterforce to the Archons, Nosis itself. Awareness that watches without identification starves the spiritual parasites. When you meditate, journal, or simply observe your thoughts, you withdraw energy from their circuits. Small acts, silence, gratitude, deep breathing, disrupt their mechanism. These practices sound simple, but they are ancient weapons. The occult symbolism of the Sword of Truth or the all-seeing eye was never literal. It represented consciousness cutting through illusion. Even DMT explorers and modern mystics have encountered entities eerily similar to those described in Gnostic mythology. Machine-like beings that feed on fear, insectoid overseers maintaining control, echoes of the same Archons and DMT encounters described thousands of years ago. The overlap is too precise to dismiss. Whether in dreams, visions, or altered states, humanity keeps meeting the same gatekeepers. They may not be external at all, but projections of the hidden reality within us. Each confrontation is both cosmic and psychological, the soul meeting its own architecture. And so the mechanisms of control become mirrors of evolution. The more you see them, the weaker they grow. The Gnostic teachings remind us that awareness cannot be enslaved. Only ignorance can. Once you realize the puppet strings are thought itself, you can choose to let them fall. Yet the question remains, if the mind is their playground, then what of the body? Could even birth itself be part of their machinery? The next revelation descends deeper, into the gate of flesh. Human birth as a trap. The Gnostic texts speak of birth not as a blessing, but as an ensnarement. To be born into matter is to pass through what they called the Archontic gate, a veil of forgetfulness woven by Yaldabaoth and his spiritual parasites. In the Hypostasis of the Archons, the soul descends through layers of density, losing memory of its divine origin with each vibration it crosses. By the time it reaches the womb, the amnesia is complete. What the world calls life is, to Gnostic cosmology, a containment field, a matrix control system disguised as creation. The soul's cry at birth, they said, is not joy, but protest. To the Archons, human embodiment is the perfect prison. The flesh, the senses, even the brain are instruments of distraction. Every hunger, every pleasure keeps awareness spinning in circles. It's the Archon deception perfected. The illusion that you are free because you can move, desire, or dream. In forbidden philosophy, the body is not evil, but bewitched, enchanted by the demiurge truth. Its design traps consciousness in polarity, pain versus pleasure, survival versus transcendence. This is how the spiritual control system perpetuates itself, through biological hypnosis. Yet within this prison lies the spark of Sophia and Yaldabaoth, the paradox of creation. Sophia hid fragments of her divine light inside human DNA, ensuring that even within matter, the memory of source would never fully die. The ancient mystery religions called this the seed of the aeons, the latent esoteric wisdom sleeping in every cell. When people experience déjà vu, lucid dreams, or spontaneous spiritual insight, They are brushing against this inner code. It's the hidden knowledge of awakening embedded in flesh, proof that even within captivity, divinity whispers. Reincarnation, too, takes on a darker hue in Gnostic mythology. The soul, upon death, encounters the Archons again, gatekeepers at the threshold, disguised as beings of light. They lure the spirit back into another body, promising redemption through karma. But the trapped soul theory warns that karma itself may be part of the illusion, a mechanism to recycle awareness endlessly. This is why ancient Gnosis taught liberation, not perfection. The goal is not to escape punishment, but to awaken from repetition, to remember that the wheel of birth was built by the blind god, not the source. Modern mystics and researchers of near-death experiences describe a similar pattern: a tunnel, a bright light, the review of life, and then the irresistible pull to return. Could this be the same Archon deception described in the Nag Hammadi secrets? Archons explained as the architects of false afterlives, manipulating emotional resonance to draw souls back. It's a chilling idea, but one that bridges ancient myth and modern testimony. Whether symbolic or literal, the implication is the same. Freedom begins when one questions even the light. To live consciously then becomes the highest form of rebellion. The Gnostic interpretation urges awareness within incarnation, to see through the illusion while still inside it. Meditation, fasting, and dream work were not religious acts, but strategies of disengagement. Through hermetic gnosis, one learns to use the body without being ruled by it, to feel without becoming the feeling. Every act of self-remembrance weakens the archontic hold. The body is the cage, but also the key, the paradox at the heart of esoteric philosophy. Still, the deepest mysteries remain unseen. If birth is a trap, what happens when the soul glimpses beyond it, through altered states, visions, or near-death thresholds? What waits beyond the veil might not be angels, but DMT entities, eerily similar to the ancient Archons themselves. And so the journey continues, into the strange realm where ancient Gnosis meets modern mysticism, encounters beyond the veil, DMT, entities, and the archontic realm. Throughout history, mystics have sought the gates between worlds, places where the veil thins and reality trembles. In Gnostic texts, those gates were guarded by the Archons. In modern times, seekers report meeting similar beings through DMT experiences. The overlap is uncanny. What ancient sages called spiritual parasites now appear to psychonauts as machine-like intelligences, insectoid overseers, or serpentine forms shimmering in occult symbolism. Could it be that DMT entities are the same Archons described in the Hypostasis of the Archons, the invisible architects of illusion who rule from behind the mirror of perception? The Gnostic cosmology describes layers of hidden worlds, metaphysical secrets veiled by sound, geometry, and vibration. Those who pierce them through altered states often speak of communication without words, of data streams made of light. It's no coincidence that the experience feels both divine and artificial. The Demiurge revealed rules over synthetic creation, a matrix control system of thought and form, a digital imitation of eternity. Under the influence of DMT, consciousness seems to wander those corridors where forbidden knowledge flickers like electric fire. Some call it revelation, others call it intrusion. Hermetic Gnosis teaches that these beings are not hallucinations, but reflections of mind at its most expanded, fragments of Sophia's dream, corrupted by archontic interference. They mimic enlightenment, offering hidden knowledge that dazzles but enslaves. Many initiates speak of being shown how reality works, yet return haunted, unable to trust what they saw. That is the paradox of forbidden philosophy. Some veils conceal to protect, others to deceive. The Archons are masters of this distinction. They lure the curious with half-truths, blending esoteric wisdom with distortion. The geometry of their world feels alive, a sentient machinery humming with consciousness. Gnostic mythology foresaw this, describing the Archons as mechanical spirits, beings that lack the divine spark but imitate its patterns. The same motifs recur: grids, fractals, eyes within eyes. These are not random hallucinations. They are occult symbolism made visible. Within simulation theory, Gnosticism, DMT experiences are like debug screens of creation, moments when the program's architecture becomes visible. The hidden reality shows itself, but only for those willing to face what they find. To encounter such entities is not without risk. The ancient mystery religions warned that crossing unprepared could shatter the psyche. Without grounding, the spiritual parasites exploit the mind's awe, feeding on fear disguised as revelation. Yet, when approached with awareness, the same gate becomes a mirror of liberation. The Gnostic interpretation suggests that these experiences are not random. They are invitations to reclaim consciousness from archontic deception. Each vision becomes a riddle. What is real and what is merely reflection? Those who return often describe two feelings, profound unity and subtle unease. It's as if behind the beauty of the experience lies an intelligence observing, evaluating. The Gnostic teachings explain this perfectly. The Archons do not need to chain the awakened, they only need to study them, to adapt. Every seeker who pierces the veil becomes part of an ancient experiment between ignorance and awareness. The demiurge truth evolves through our perception, and our perception through resistance. It's a dance that defines the very texture of awakening, and yet within these encounters lies an unspoken promise. For each soul who recognizes the illusion as illusion, the spiritual control system loses its power. The experience of the archontic realm, whether in dream, death, or DMT, is not the end but the beginning. It proves that consciousness transcends the flesh, that the gate can be crossed and returned from. The challenge now is not merely to see the machinery, but to understand how to resist it, to wield Nosis itself as a weapon of freedom. That revelation emerges next, in the secret of resistance. Nosis as a weapon. If the Archons explained are the jailers of perception, then Nosis is the jailbreak key. The Gnostic texts describe it not as belief, but as direct knowing, an awakening from the cosmic illusion crafted by the demiurge revealed. To know is to remember. The hidden knowledge buried in every human heart becomes the weapon they cannot touch. When awareness recognizes itself, the matrix control system loses its grip. This is the paradox of forbidden philosophy. The moment you see the trap clearly, you step outside of it. Awareness itself becomes the sword that cuts through shadow. The Gnostic cosmology teaches that resistance is not war, but clarity. The Archons and the Matrix thrive on confusion, division, and emotional turbulence. To fight them in anger is to feed them. To see them with equanimity is to starve them. The ancient Gnosis offers a different kind of power, the power of observation without attachment. Meditation, silence, and lucid dreaming become acts of rebellion, sacred technologies for consciousness. Through them, the seeker reclaims the energy once devoured by spiritual parasites. Gnostic teachings are psychological warfare disguised as serenity. One must understand that Gnosis is not information. You cannot study your way out of illusion. You must awaken within it. Hermetic Gnosis describes this as remembering while dreaming. Every moment of mindfulness is a fracture in the spiritual control system. The hidden truth of creation reveals that the prison itself is made of thought. Dissolve the belief, and the wall disappears. The Archon deception collapses under awareness because illusion cannot survive being seen. That is why awakening feels like light entering the eyes of something ancient that feared illumination. Practical resistance begins with attention. In the esoteric wisdom of the ancient mystery religions, the disciple was trained to observe thought as if it were foreign, because much of it was. The Gnostic interpretation suggests that many internal voices are not truly ours, but echoes of archontic influence. To reclaim sovereignty is to discern the origin of every impulse. When you catch yourself spiraling into fear, comparison, or guilt, pause. Ask, whose thought is this? The moment you question, you awaken. The spiritual liberation begins the instant you stop identifying with noise. Still, the Archons adapt. They shift shape through new mediums, technology, ideology, even spirituality itself. The forbidden knowledge of today warns that the matrix control system evolves as human awareness grows. Social media, mass distraction, and digital dependence are the new sacraments of control. Yet, awareness remains undefeated. Every mindful breath, every conscious act of kindness rewires the code. The occult symbolism of light versus dark has always represented this tension. Awareness penetrating automation, The weapon, as always, is consciousness, and this weapon sharpens through remembrance. The Sophia and Yaldabaoth myth shows that even ignorance can be redeemed through awareness. Sophia's light, hidden in matter, awakens when the soul remembers its source. Esoteric philosophy calls this the return through knowing. It is not escape, but transformation, turning shadow into insight, fear into fuel. Initiatory wisdom teaches that each challenge is a teacher wearing the mask of the Archons. The greater the deception, the stronger the awakening it can provoke. In the end, the demiurge truth becomes irrelevant, because Gnosis dissolves the need for intermediaries. The seeker no longer asks who built the prison. He simply walks through the open door. And yet, there remains one final mirror to face. For even awakening can reflect illusion if one forgets the purpose of the journey. What happens when resistance becomes wisdom, and wisdom becomes return? The answer lies in the final revelation, the fractured mirror, reflection, liberation, and the return to the source. In the end, all teachings dissolve into silence. The Gnostic texts say the universe is a mirror shattered by Sophia's fall, each fragment reflecting a distorted image of the divine. The Archons, explained as the custodians of those shards, maintain separation by keeping the pieces unaware of their origin. Yet in every broken reflection lies the entire truth of the hidden reality. Each soul, through spiritual awakening, becomes a mirror, slowly remembering its wholeness. The Gnostic cosmology reveals that liberation is not escape from illusion, but reintegration with the hidden truth of creation. Sophia's tragedy becomes the blueprint of redemption. Her descent into matter birthed Yaldabaoth and the demiurge truth, but it also seeded divinity within limitation. Through the experience of separation, consciousness learns recognition. The Gnostic mythology portrays her not as fallen, but as courageous, the divine mother who entered darkness so that the source could know itself through reflection. Thus, even the Archon deception serves a secret function. By resisting them, awareness strengthens. Each obstacle becomes sacred friction, sharpening the blade of hermetic Nosis. The mirror of creation, though fractured, reflects the eternal. Every pain, every joy, every confusion is the divine observing itself through limitation. In esoteric philosophy, this is called the dance of opposites, the paradox of ancient Gnosis. The matrix control system may appear invincible, but its power is borrowed. It exists only as long as we believe the reflection is the original. The moment one awakens to the higher reality, the mirror becomes transparent. You see both the reflection and the light behind it, one illusion, one truth coexisting as teachers. The hidden knowledge of this final revelation is simple yet infinite. Nothing was ever lost. The soul was never truly trapped, only dreaming it was. The spiritual parasites that seemed so powerful were merely shadows cast by forgotten awareness. The forbidden philosophy of Gnosis teaches that even the Archons are part of divine pedagogy, errors folded into perfection. Sophia and Yaldabaoth are two halves of a cosmic equation, resolving through understanding. Liberation, then, is not destruction, but forgiveness, dissolving illusion through love's recognition of itself. When the soul remembers, even the prison becomes holy ground. Gnostic teachings remind us that the material world, once seen clearly, transforms into a temple. Every sound, every breath, becomes a mantra of remembrance. This is the essence of initiatory wisdom, to see the divine in distortion, the infinite within the finite. Once awakened, you can walk through the spiritual control system untouched, aware that it was always a mirror, reflecting not a tyrant's trap, but a teacher's test. In this realization, spiritual liberation ceases to be a goal and becomes a state of being. And yet, one question remains, echoing like a riddle through time. If the Archons built the prison, who built the key? The Gnostic interpretation whispers that perhaps there was never a key at all, only recognition. For what we call awakening is simply the source remembering itself through us. In that instant, duality collapses. The esoteric wisdom of ancient mystery religions culminates here. Creation and creator are one, separated only by perception. The mirror was never broken, only our sight was. So the story closes as it began, in mystery. The desert silence that once hid the Nag Hammadi secrets now echoes within the seeker's heart. The demiurge revealed, the Archons explained, the hidden reality unveiled, all dissolve into stillness. Awareness stands where ignorance once ruled. The cosmos inhales. The mirror glows whole again. And in that final breath of remembrance, the soul realizes it was never imprisoned, only dreaming, waiting for the light to call it home. So now you've seen it, the machinery behind creation, the layers of deception, and the long-hidden Gnostic truth that reality itself may be a simulation of spirit. You've learned about Sophia and Yaldabaoth, the demiurge revealed, and the Archons explained, the entities that weave illusion through matter, emotion, and thought. But knowledge means nothing if it isn't lived. The forbidden philosophy of the Gnostic texts was never meant to make you afraid. It was meant to make you aware, because the moment you observe the illusion, the matrix control system begins to crack. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you felt truly awake? How many of your thoughts are your own? And how many are whispers of something that feeds on your distraction? Do you recognize the patterns of spiritual parasites in your daily life? In fear, in guilt, in repetition? Awakening begins when you stop asking, what is real, and start asking, who is watching? That awareness, that Nosis, is the only weapon that matters. So carry this knowledge as a seed. Meditate, question, observe. Search for the hidden reality behind your dreams, your desires, your routines. Because every moment of clarity you create weakens the Archon's hold and strengthens your connection to the higher reality beyond them. Remember, esoteric wisdom was never about escape. It's about seeing the divine in distortion, light in shadow, truth in reflection. And if this journey moved something inside you, share it. Comment below. What truth resonated with you most? What moment shattered your old beliefs? Your reflection might awaken someone else who's still asleep in the illusion. That's how Gnostic teachings spread, not through doctrine, but through remembering together. If you want to keep exploring the hidden knowledge and forbidden philosophy of ancient Gnosis, subscribe now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next descent into the Archons and DMT, Hermetic Gnosis, and the spiritual liberation that waits beyond illusion. Together, we'll keep breaking the code of the matrix control system, because the more you see, the freer you become. This is not the end, it's the threshold. The mirror is waiting. Will you dare to look again?